a little bit early. I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to introduce this and then give it over to Dawn and Ellen, and we're all going to interact around this fundamental existential dilemma, predicament humanity is in right now, that you can see people trying to solve behind me in a live stream from Egypt, and that is climate change sustainability. I just wanted to say that one of the reasons why we created the Global Classroom here, and that Dawn built this center and gave us this space, is the recognition that younger people today are entering a world that is extremely complex with a lot of problems. And if they don't understand how to get smarter, and if they're not more educated to deal with these local problems, they're global and local all at the same time. The weather here today, as I gave an example of, snowing today, summer last week, that's climate change locally that we're dealing with here. But then there's the global phenomenon. And so it was Dawn's intent and the college's intent to ensure that students have a place where they can come in every single discipline here, every single field, where they can actually engage in this global conversation to prepare them for their professions and for their difficult decisions in life. So I want to take this opportunity, as I always do when our president appears, to thank him for having the vision to spend something like 50 meetings that you had with 3 or 4 levels of government. And I still remember the day when the Global Classroom was beside your office, and you were going to your office, and I saw you and I waved, and you came in and you said, listen, we're going to get the money, $45–50 million to build this. And I just had my 51st meeting or something. So this would not be built. These opportunities would not be given. Durham College would not be able to walk the talk about leading the way if it weren't for something that happens at the top here. So, Dawn, I thank you as always, and you can take it away.
Thank you, Lon.
Yeah,
you're too humble, and thank you for the comments. But what Lon isn't telling you is he was the brainchild behind this over a 5-year period. So, invest in great ideas, invest in innovation, invest in students. That's basically what it's all about. I want to come back to your comments about the global impact of climate change, but first I wanted to make a land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge that Durham College is situated on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, and is now home to many Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island, or North America. The work on these lands acknowledges the resilient and long-standing contributions to the area we now know as Durham Region. Acknowledging territory shows recognition of and respect for Indigenous people. It is recognition of their presence both in the past and present. Recognition and respect are essential elements to establishing a healthy, reciprocal relationships, which are key to reconciliation. However, acknowledging territory is only the beginning of cultivating strong relationships with the First People of Canada. We recognize acknowledging the territory is an important step to reaching out to local Indigenous communities to open pathways and dialogue. So thank you for joining us. It's funny because we were having a conversation this morning about the impact of the environment. And yesterday there was a show on CBC Radio, and it talked about the risks to Nova Scotia, and Nova Scotia actually becoming an island. There's a 20 kilometer strip of land that connects Nova Scotia to the rest of Canada. And in that stretch of land is every bit of infrastructure they need: roads, rail, electricity, fiber, gas, everything. But they estimate, given what we've seen around the world, that is at risk. That at some point, some wave, some water may destroy that bridge to Nova Scotia. And if you think about it, we were having this conversation 20 years ago. 20 years ago, there was conversations about the rising sea levels around the world. The amount of population that lives on the seaside, and we just saw that in Florida, where we saw entire pieces of land and communities just swept into the sea. So, I mean, we keep on talking about this and we keep on setting goals, and what's going on in Egypt today is very important. But we have to make decisions. You young people, you're the next generation. We've screwed it up badly, but now we need to sort of get behind this, and we need to figure out how to improve the way we live and dependency on certain things that are polluting our airs and water. So, so I do have some notes I want to read before I open up to questions, but. So in 2015, there were 17 goals adopted by the UN member states as part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. If you are outside our bookstore and you look on the wall outside of our bookstore, all 17 goals are on the bookstore wall and describes what they are. They're color panels. The pin that I'm wearing today on my jacket represents those 17 SDGs, as they call them. And I sit on a national board for CICAN Canada, which is College Institutes Canada. And we have set 6 of these goals as priorities for college institutes right across Canada. So it's not only a priority for Canada, for Ontario, but it's a priority for education and education across this country to really try to move the yardstick around these goals, around tackling climate change. And that's goal number 13, if you look on that wall. Today, I'm really delighted we have 3 DC grads with us today who will share their unique perspectives on the work that they're doing to help contribute to achieving the climate change, the sustainability goals. And we look forward to learning about their work and having a conversation about how we can make a difference. All of us make a difference. So with me here is Ellen Campbell. And Ellen is a water quality technician grad from who is a founder and director of Rated In, a not-for-profit that challenges students to create climate resilience solutions that focused on intense rainfall and flooding. Of course, we're seeing that everywhere. She's an active volunteer in the water space, volunteering with the Canadian Water Network, Waterlution, is that right? Waterlution, and the Water Environment Association of Ontario. She also serves on the Walkerton Clean Water Centre's Board of Directors. Welcome to you, Ellen. Online, we have Heather Brown. Heather is a 2-time grad and from HR Management and Social Services Worker Programs, is currently the president of Iron Access DC, an organization of entrepreneurial leaders passionate about advancing the economic, social, and environmental health of our world. Her experience leading in high-impact student-led projects have resulted in consistent national-level accreditations, numerous team and individual awards, as well as grants from organizations and local government. I can remember the mayor of Whitby being here, presenting us a nice check with Heather being present. The last one is Kathleen Fraser. Catherine is a journalism and mass media grad who has developed an interest and passion for climate change through her educational journey. From covering environmental topics from the DC Chronicle, good start, while she was a student, to her postgraduate work, which includes understanding the ways logistic choices made by journalists impact audience perceptions and motivate people to act in support of climate initiatives. So we've got 3 great grads here. The topic is timely, the topic is important, and let's start off with some questions here. Lon, do you want to do anything before I start? You always want to do something.
Yeah, you got to peel me off the ceiling. Don once said in a meeting, get Lon off the ceiling. Okay, so bring him back down. Just a tech issue here, just to make sure. It's not an issue, it's just a clarification. Debbie Johnston has come in on the live chat and asked if Don could hold his microphone a little bit further away.
Further away?
No, I would say Don's following directions, which is we are asking all participants, Debbie, to speak into the microphone, not over the microphone, because then you can't hear at all. And so this is really important that he speaks in, and you too. If there's a little bit of a, yeah, okay, fair enough. Debbie we got this multimedia. We got this all happening.
Okay, is that better, Debbie?
Yeah. Okay, so Debbie said good, we're good.
Okay, so use 4 to 6 inches as a rule. Okay, we got that?
Get the ruler. Okay, I don't know where
Use your cell phone.
Use your cell phone. Okay, so
all right, so let's go to our panelists.
Move it on.
Okay, let's start here with Ellen, and then we're going to go around. So what I want you to do in 2 to 3 minutes, tell us where you live and work, what you do for your job, and what you like best about the work that you're doing. Over to you.
Make sure you turn it on too. Yeah, I
It's
know
on.
it's always. Oh no, it's on. Good. It's just so many moving parts in a global classroom, but you're on it. Okay.
You
Good.
might have to put a
Yeah.
little bit closer because
Yeah.
you're soft spoken.
That's it.
Everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
So as John mentioned, my name is Ellen. I live up in Kawartha Lakes in a little town called Woodville. It's about an hour drive north of here. For my job, I wear a couple different hats. So my full-time job, I operate water and wastewater treatment facilities with the Ontario Clean Water Agency. Part-time, I am a marketing manager for the Ontario Association of Sewage Industry Services. And what I'm here to talk to you about today is the work I do with my nonprofit, Rein It In. What I like best about my job is it kind of ties into, I think, something we might talk about a little bit later, but my operations in water wastewater stems from being born in a community that experienced a water crisis back in the year 2000. So I get to be part of making sure that that doesn't happen again. So it's really important. So.
Thank you very much. Can you hear her online?
Everybody good? Brian, do you want to just give a thumb up? Brian Legree, I see has been nodding. Good.
Okay,
Yeah, so there we go.
wonderful.
Yeah.
So let's go over to Heather. Heather Brown, where are you? You want to answer the same three questions. Tell us where you live and work. What do you do for your job, and what do you like best about your work?
Here comes Heather.
So currently I'm involved in two positions at Durham College. One is the entrepreneurship coordinator in the 360 Insight Center, and the other one, which is going to be my main place of talking, is as the president of Enactus Durham College. So as coordinator, I support students to launch and develop their own businesses while they study at Durham College, from developing viable business ideas to curating marketing assets and launching. Myself and my team work with students throughout their entrepreneurial journey. As president of Enactus DC, I also work with students, but with a goal of creating social impact projects. So Enactus DC is a community of dedicated students that strive to create a better, more sustainable world. Together, we create innovative solutions and projects to address social, economical, and environmental issues within our community. The thing I enjoy most about my positions is connecting with students about their interests and passions. You know, whether it's, a student coming in with their first business idea or something they find concerning in the community, the students who come into our space want to take action, and learning more about what brought them into our space and can be some of the most interesting conversations that you can have. And with my roles, I not only get to have those conversations, I get to turn them into something more. So whether it be in form of a new student business or a new innovative project, I get to be involved in a lot of those stages, and I really enjoy that.
Thanks, Heather. Appreciate that. So, Catherine, yeah, you're next. Do I have to repeat the questions, or you got them written down?
I got them written down.
All right, welcome, Catherine.
Yes, Catherine.
So much. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Catherine Fraser, and I graduated from the Journalism and Mass Media program at DC in 2019. I then went on to study Communications and Digital Media at Ontario Tech, and I currently live in Hamilton, Ontario. And actually, tomorrow, I'm officially graduating from McMaster University with a Master in Communication and New Media.
Congratulations.
You. And as you can tell, I'm in the communications, marketing, and social media industry, hoping to work in the STEM environment. And the research that I completed in my undergrad, like Don had mentioned, looked at climate change in the Canadian media, how linguistic choices shape audience perceptions of climate-related information. And my thesis also examined how language influences people to support, believe in, or act on climate change initiatives. I really enjoyed examining the nuances of writing and the way journalists frame articles can transform the way people understand science, inspiring communities to make a difference and then learn about sustainability.
Thank you very much. So my first question to all three of you, so we'll take turns answering. We'll start in reverse order this time, okay? We'll go to Catherine, Heather, and come back to Ellen. My first question is, you all have very different backgrounds. You have very different jobs. So how is your work that you're doing related to sustainability or climate change?
That is a great question. So social media
Thank you.
and
I didn't write it, but
technology.
thank you.
Sally question? Yeah, it's a Sally. Okay. You wrote it, Don. What are you talking about?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So social media and technology, it's a part of our lives like never before. We are so connected to our devices and rely on them constantly to receive information, updates, news, and so much more. Climate change and science information is simply a part of that process. And in order for the public to be made aware of the impacts of climate change, solutions, and its development in society, the media has a responsibility to report on it across all platforms and inform all people. And without communications, people would be left in the dark and have no tangible access to the environmental news around them. Environmental communication, it saves lives. When disasters strike, audiences heavily depend on receiving weather, climate, and emergency information. So my role as a journalist, communicator, and social media specialist enables me to remain connected to crucial networks so I can help, advise, and disseminate climate change information to the people who need it the most.
Thanks, Catherine. We're going to dig into that a little bit deeper in a couple of questions here, but let's hear from the others first. Heather.
So with my position as president of Enactus Durham College, it's more in the mentorship and empowerment of students to action their ideas. You know, Enactus projects are guided by the UN SDGs, so they can involve a variety of topics from, you know, mental health to climate change and sustainability. In the past, I've been working hands-on with projects, creating my own projects and developing student ideas. That experience in project work now allows me to teach and mentor students into creating viable, scalable, and high-impact projects. Currently, one of the things we're working on is a process that we've coined as Imagination Station, which supports and inspires students who have brand new ideas and to build them into exciting and successful projects. You know, like what Catherine mentioned, the way you speak to students or how you convey information can really change how they interact and how they get involved. And Imagination Station is all about the collaboration, building a depth of understanding when it comes to problems and creating those innovative solutions that we can be excited about, and they're encouraged and they feel like they can do those impacts. This formalized Imagination Station will continue to be used in the future of our team and members to support and launch new projects. So that's something we're currently working on.
That's great. Keep up the good work. So Ellen, we're going to finish with you.
So I love hearing about what my fellow alumni are doing, because I find all of our work kind of links together. Catherine, I have a really strong passion for bridging the knowledge gap between the general public and the water industry. So I can really appreciate the work that you're doing and the importance of it. And Heather, the work you're doing with Enactus and the different programs at the college here is almost like a complementary step to the work that I'm doing with Rein It In. So the involvement that I have with climate change and making a difference through Rein It In here is we partner with different municipalities who provide a specific challenge for the students to solve around intense rainfall and flooding. So recently we worked with the town of Ajax, who is dealing with urban and riverine flooding issues. And we're currently working with the city of London, who is trying to also bridge that knowledge gap with the public about stormwater education. So the students are creating experiential learning kits that can be deployed in different environments with students or at the library or in the community to help get these key messages across and engage the public. So we're looking at local problems and coming up with solutions to those problems. And the hope is that these problems will be later implemented to actually make a difference in our communities.
So I'm going to leave you in the hot seat for a moment here. So you know, I go on down the hall to the washroom, I turn on the tap, water comes. So what's the big deal? So why have you decided to study water or work in water? I mean, that started with your decision to come to Durham and study it, and so you know, a little bit of sort of poking looks. What's the big deal about water, and why are you in that field?
Oh, that's such a big question. So I mentioned in my introduction about a water crisis that affected my hometown. So I'll go into a little bit more detail about that, because it was about over 20 years ago now, and it's not something that's talked about as much anymore. So a lot of people aren't aware about this story. So I was born in Walkerton, Ontario, and in the year 2000, there was an intense rainfall event that caused manure from a nearby farm to flood and enter a drinking water well for the town. Um, there weren't source water protection measures in place at this time, or like the multi-barrier approach, if you're familiar with that. Um, there weren't proper reporting requirements. There wasn't training. It was the perfect storm, Walkerton. It really could have been any community at that time. And all the stars aligned in Walkerton. So when this contamination happened and the water wasn't being treated properly, 2,500 people of the 5,000 people in the town became really sick with E. coli poisoning, and 7 people actually died. So this was a huge crisis, one of the biggest ones in Canada, actually. And it transformed the industry. We now have very strict regulations and inspections and requirements that need to be followed to prevent that from happening again. So I was about 7 when this happened. My family, fortunately, we had moved the year before the flood, but we still knew a lot of people who had been affected by it, and it's found a way to shape everything I've been doing with my career. So as we've mentioned, I operate water and wastewater treatment plants, and I want to make sure that that doesn't happen again to another community because it's totally preventable. And then when we transfer into the work I'm doing with Rain It In, we're looking at intense rainfall events and the impacts of that and trying to prevent that. So that's water is just part of my life. I don't know how to not do water, and it's continually shaping everything that I do in my career and my personal life. So
Wonderful answer. And, it's somebody that sort of learned by the lessons of a mistake and continue to try to make positive change for you. Well done. Catherine. So, where are you, Catherine? Your honors thesis was on climate change and how the ways in which journalists report on climate news influences and motivates people to take action. How can we encourage others to think critically about their consumption of climate change news and evaluate their sources? I'm going to throw a little bit of a curve in there. How do you help people balance the narrative and rhetoric of government versus what we can actually do as citizens?
Catherine, just before you answer, I just want to give a process point here for all of you online, and there are about 33 or 34. Please feel free to put questions in the live chat. This is like a brainstorm session, and if something comes to you, park it in the live chat, and we will take it up later.
Thanks,
Okay?
Lon. Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Great, thank you so much. So before I answer this question, I'm going to give a little bit of a background and context on the structure of climate change articles as a whole. So at Durham College, I was taught by the amazing faculty of the journalism program that reporting needed to be fair, balanced, and accurate. And I stand by this statement and try my best to follow it whenever I'm communicating about the environment. So my undergrad honors thesis at Ontario Tech explored this question, looking at the importance of critically analyzing articles, sources, and the organizations behind the news on climate change, including potential political affiliations, like you mentioned. And in my research, I acknowledged that the media industry is highly reliant on time. A key tenet of determining the newsworthiness of an event or a story involves timeliness and its proximity, adding both a temporal and a spatial layer to news pieces. So in the articles that I analyzed, I developed a basic temporal structure in each news article. So pieces on climate change often begin with temporal urgency at the very top. So a sort of pressure associated with time. For example, can we act before it's too late? We are experiencing a climate apocalypse. So using this sensationalized language, it draws in readers, however, perpetuates fear, favoring threats and warnings over accuracy and authenticity. And then after temporal urgency, temporal pessimism enters the scene. So language that drives negativity, focuses on loss and our inability to control the climate crisis. So temporal pessimism can look depressing, strategically weaving depleting statistics into paragraphs that feel insurmountable to overcome. So for example, this climate target will be a failure, or sea life in this region is in peril. And lastly, most climate change articles end with temporal optimism at the end. So looking to the future, inspiring readers who stayed until the end of the article to hold on to hope, remain positive, and admire the climate initiatives that are already underway. So by injecting optimism at the end of an article, journalists attempt to switch this narrative of doom into action. However, if there was optimism, hope, and tangible educational resources spread throughout the article, the writing would then be balanced and more audiences would be willing to, one, read the article in full, two, audiences would feel informed and updated, and three, be empowered, recognizing that they can make a transformative climate difference in their own community. But an oversaturation of optimism can then lead to a dilution of the truth, and that's why each element of temporality, the urgency, pessimism, and optimism, they need to be balanced with that slight prioritization of this optimism. So, back to the question, how can we encourage others to think critically about the consumption of climate change news and evaluate their sources? So we have to recognize that we cannot avoid or prevent the sensationalization of climate change in the news. And some companies value clickbait as an effective tool built into the practice of climate change news proliferation. However, we can encourage others by being mindful of language choices, even pointing out instances of this temporal optimism that we notice laced throughout everyday articles. So when reporting on climate change, journalists have a responsibility to be transparent and unbiased, but we as a public must also be open to receiving verified, factual, scientific information, even if it makes us uncomfortable. And knowledge is power, and the more we are informed of the truth, the better. The evaluation of sources is so critical, so we need to develop a list of resources that feature credible, timely, and reliable websites or broadcast stations to receive climate news from. And most importantly, we have to continue presenting climate change as a solvable reality to motivate audiences. And we should not only mention what we aren't doing, but rather what we can do and what we're already doing to protect the environment.
What are your impressions of the messages that are coming from media around what we can do as citizens around climate change, citizens, students, organizations?
Sorry, I didn't hear you there, Lon. I think
Okay.
it cut out for a
Go ahead,
second.
Don. It might have been me. I might have. Go ahead and say it again.
Lon's playing around with my
Yeah, I'm
microphone,
having-
so you couldn't hear me. But
Okay.
so we have
handling?
we
Go
have
ahead.
a lot of information coming out of Egypt right now. And world leaders, people from all walks of life, talking about climate change. As a communicator, what's your impressions of the messaging we're receiving as citizens and what we can do in our role in climate change?
Well, what we can do is again be quite open to this information that is being delivered to us, and especially being critical of these sources, predominantly political sources as well. There are a lot of great resources in the States. However, we have to be mindful of where these affiliations lie and on what side of the political spectrum, because climate change has truly evolved into such a polarizing topic, unfortunately, in the media. So as consumers of climate change, we have to recognize that words can be manipulated, things can be altered to suit someone's own narrative. And especially when we're hearing from different leaders and people in power, we have to remain vigilant and aware of those who may be vulnerable in those situations and what these words can do and impact in their community. So that's strongly what I believe. I think just remaining as aware as possible is the most powerful tool that we can have.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to ask Heather one last question, then pause for a moment to see if there's any questions from our audience or people online. So Heather, my question for you is, we all know that climate change is a global issue. As president of Enactus DC, tell us a bit about this organization and the work that you and your team have done to make a positive impact on climate change.
Yeah, of course. So as I mentioned, Enactus creates projects, and what does that mean in the context of a global issue like climate change? We often use the saying, "Act locally, think globally," and that embodies exactly what we do at Enactus. So climate change can seem like a really daunting topic because it is. So how do we contribute positively to such a daunting global issue? So at Enactus, overall, we're an international organization that operates in 33 countries, and their mission statement is Enactus is a network of leaders who are committed to using business as a catalyst for positive social and environmental impact. We educate, inspire, and support young people to use innovation and entrepreneurship to solve the world's biggest problems. And our team, Enactus Durham College, is the Durham College chapter. We are one of 70 plus teams in Canada. And that is a lot of power and a lot of support to generate those impacts and create global national change. Not only does each team run their own projects that focuses on the world around them, but those efforts and the efforts of the team members and the communities build into something bigger. And I'm going to throw throw some stats. So environmental and sustainability is actually a core competitive challenge for both regional and national competitions for Enactus Canada and Canadian teams. So through this challenge, teams have worked in over 1,200 environmental projects. They conserved over 680 million liters of water. They diverted 400.
Heather, do you want to pause for a second if you
Yep.
can hear me? That you got muted on.
Okay, go ahead. I think we're good now.
Okay, go ahead, Heather. Where did we stop you? We stopped you on regional challenges. Thank you for that.
It's my mistake. I'm just trying to.
Leave the buttons alone.
Yeah, Don, I love the tech, and it's your fault for encouraging tech. No, I just
Go ahead, Heather.
missed.
Please continue.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so the environmental and sustainability is a core challenge. So our teams, create projects and they compete every year in this challenge. And together, they've created 12,000 environmental projects. They conserved over 680 million liters of water, diverted 450 tons of CO2, and 250,000 tons of waste from landfills. Those are big numbers, right? And those numbers all come from contribution to local level projects. So the projects we run, the projects other teams run. So even though climate change is this global and daunting issue, what we do at a local level is significant because our network is global too. And I think that's a really key consideration when you're trying to get involved, is that you're not going to solve the global issue by yourself. There are others who are also working towards it. And the solutions you make, although you may think are, not that valuable or, focus on a very specific topic, that contributes to a larger working network to create those solutions and make the world a better place.
It all starts with action, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, that's a great answer. Let me just pause. Lon, do we have any questions? I do have another.
Yeah, let's
Are there
check and
questions
see
online
what's in the chat and
or in here?
just a second. I'm just clicking on the wrong.
We do have a question. We do have a question here. Hang on.
Great. Okay. Jay, is it Jay? Yeah. And there's a microphone here actually for audience too, so you can keep. Doesn't matter, Jay. That's good. Actually, Jay, do you want to come in a little bit just so I don't have to do too many camera moves, so we can see everyone can see you? Great. Yeah, that's good.
Right.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I'm interested in your input on this. So very timely. Just this morning, I heard Neil Young being interviewed, and he just came out with a new album that was all around helping the earth. And the songs, for those of you who know Neil Young, famous Canadian singer-songwriter.
Look at
my
my.
I'm a lot like you.
Yeah.
Where that song gets more relevant every year, actually, for me. So, old man. But he was talking about the media specifically and climate change, and the fact that every day the headline is about, what president, what prime minister, what country's fighting with who, right and left, and then page 6 is the environmental. Unless something really bad happens, unless there's a storm, a flood, an adverse event. So what do we do to change the media's perspective that, like you said, Catherine, every day there's an urgent climate event. How do we make that page one news every day?
Great question. You want to start, Catherine, and we'll make our rounds?
Good.
Sure, I'll give it a go. That's an amazing question. I've noticed that myself, and while being in the newsroom environment, and I ended up doing an internship with CTV News in Regina, and a lot of political stories were always front page, and environment did end up taking a backseat unless there was that sort of natural hazard that posed imminent danger to a group of people or a community. So I think that we together have to make it a priority that climate news can no longer take the backseat. And the way that we can do that is by continually engaging with scientific climate facts and information as it comes out through other mediums and other sources. And by doing so, we can then encourage and petition newsrooms and more broadcast environments to prioritize this news themselves. A lot of the time, it does depend on what is currently breaking news in that moment. And a lot of the times when climate events do happen, whether it's a new IPCC report or a UN announcement, those do kind of move to the forefront. But we need to find a way by consistently engaging with the content that's being delivered to push that to the front. And that could be through a simple letter to the editor. That could be getting involved in other ways and kind of taking it upon ourselves to create content that puts climate in the forefront as well. But it's a very challenging topic for sure, finding ways to prioritize that information.
Thanks, Catherine. Ellen or Heather, did you want to add to that at all?
Can I just jump in for a second and go to the live chat? I just want to, or are you okay? Yeah.
Again, okay.
Yeah.
I'll just repeat that because my
go
microphone
ahead.
shut off. So, Ellen or Heather, did you want to add anything to those comments from Catherine, or do you want to go to the next question?
I could add something a little. I think it's also a little bit of a matter of attention. So, we talk about how you always add that attention grabbing line at the beginning to bring them in. Things that are happening new and now in politicians, those are very much in the moment topics. And climate change is something that has happened over years, generations, and it's, the icebergs are melting, and there's plastic in the ocean, and these are all topics that we're all familiar with and we've heard about. So how do you then take these existing topics that will continue to exist and will take years and decades to potentially solve and make that the new, the now? How do you engage people on this topic? It can be very difficult. So like when we compete about topics like plastic or pollution, we have to add those hooks into the beginning of our speeches because we need to grab their attention, because they're already, mildly aware of these topics. They're not exciting. They're not new. They're not right this second. So communicating in that way will also kind of have to change to get people to pay attention to them and to grab their attention, even though it's, a long existing problem and will continue to be within our lives probably continuously for a very long time.
Thanks, Heather. Did you want to add anything, Ellen? Or okay, go ahead.
I think another avenue that we could look at for prioritizing news around climate change and sustainability is engaging youth. Like I mentioned, I'm really passionate about bridging that knowledge gap. And if you think back to recycling when it was introduced, it was through the schools and it was the students that made it successful. They put the bins in, they educated the students, and the students would come home and mom and dad would go to say throw their pop can in the garbage can, and the kids would be, no mom, no, that goes in the blue bin. So I think educating youth to make it a priority, get them excited about it, get them engaged with it. They're going to want to read about it. It's going to become priority news that needs to be covered more regularly and more prominently. So,
I can't help but think, is her name Greta, the young woman who basically got world recognition for her efforts? And I guess to all students, students' voices unite. It's really trying to get voices out in the public. And Jay, it was a great question. So how do we change that? And But the power of youth is incredible, and with the right messaging, it can be in that front page. I don't think she went to this summit, right? So she boycotted it because, again, it's going to be lots of political promises with no action, and we see that repeatedly, right? Greenwashing, yeah, yeah.
Our Prime Minister, for example, Justin Trudeau, did not attend COP27. There may be other reasons for that. What's that? Is your microphone on? No, I'm doing too much. I turned it off. Now it's on. Okay, just got to leave it on. The Don mentioned Greta Thunberg and the fact that as the world's primary youth activist on climate change, she has said that she is sort of boycotting COP27, the conference that will end this week. And her view is that these kinds of conferences are greenwashing. And even our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, for maybe other reasons, he didn't attend. His officials did. So I just wanted to mention something while we're on this, and then we'll keep going. There are good comments coming in on the live chat right now. And I wanted to give one person who's made a good comment about, it's not just journalism, it's about communication, how we communicate and dedicate resources to educating people about climate change. Danielle Harder, do you want to jump on your microphone and just read out loud to us what's in your post there? Go ahead.
Hi, Lon. Thank you for this. So I do get on a bit of a soapbox about this because people
I'll
have
read
attended.
Danielle says, pay for your news so news organizations can hire more journalists. A major challenge is that many newsrooms simply don't have enough reporters on staff to cover everything. If people want quality information, they need to pay for their news. Now, I would just say to the students here and others that maybe the issue is bigger than that, which is that we just aren't ready as a society to deal with the complexity and the difficult decisions that are required to face this problem. And Dawn mentioned at the beginning about making decisions. This is something as a president you do all the time. You're thinking ahead, long term, you've got big decisions, they're difficult. But, I'm wondering if you could address this a little bit, Dawn, about making difficult decisions, because this is what we all need to be doing.
I read a headline, I think it was, I think it's the Globe and Mail, and or was the Auditor General, I can't remember where it came from, but talked about Canada, and they spend 5 times the amount of money on repairing damage from environmental than they do on actually taking proactive actions. I give you an example early around the land bridge to Nova Scotia. And that's where this article came from, is that, so are we going to spend, is the Canadian government going to spend some money to actually be proactive and take actions so it protects that land and changes the practice of our environment? Or are they going to spend 5 times the amount of money repairing it at some point when the bridge disappears and Nova Scotia becomes an island? Those are tough decisions, and those are decisions that politicians, investments, and all of us have to make, right? But again, unless we as citizens express our points of view and our voice, nothing happens, right? I mean, politicians are really supposed to be servants to us, but they're not always doing that.
Is the
And it's
point
hard.
here?
I mean, on a global perspective,
Yes.
it's hard to make decisions.
Okay.
It's like horse trading, right?
But something for the notes that I think, because there's going to be some very important takeaway here that's going to come from Madison's notes at the end, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, and then we'll move on. I just think we don't always have this opportunity to have our president here who makes big decisions, can bring that leadership perspective. Is it more economically feasible to be proactive? Is that what you're saying? I mean, instead of repairing and fixing, we end up throwing more money at fixing stuff. If we could be smarter and be more proactive, we'll save money. Is that true?
Well, sure, it's true. If you look at Durham College, a small example, so we are one of Canada's greenest employers and have been for 7 or 8 years in a row. So how do we get there? We made investments into our heating systems, our cooling systems, our geothermal plant, all of our electronics to monitor our systems, and it saved us money. So those investments have in turn saved the college money, but also have reduced our greenhouse gas emissions and reduce our green footprint. So yes, you can be proactive.
Yeah.
If you look at how you can improve your organizations, how you can make your buildings more energy efficient, reducing your greenhouse gas, those are all things that can be done proactively. But it takes money. In turn, you're going to save money long term. So it's making those investments and having that dialogue with the leadership at Durham College and those experts in that field at Durham College about how can we do this better. And that's why we're one of Canada's greenest employers, because of all the things that we do around sustainability and trying to make our footprint smaller in this global crisis, right?
Great, thanks. Okay, no, please carry on.
So I'm going to go back to our panelist. I'm sorry, we have a question here. Hang on.
Yeah, go ahead, take, yeah, you give it to him, sure.
Can everybody hear me okay? All right, so my question was to just circle a little bit back to getting the attention of our readers for different articles. And I read a lot about how attention spans are shrinking, especially with our younger generation. And I think that my question is basically, how do you, now that you've used clickbait or whatever it is to get people to actually click on and read the title of your article, how do you continue that conversation throughout the rest of the article? How do you make sure that they read the entire article, especially with them, when you look at social media, attention for things like TikTok or Instagram Reels are no more than 15 to 20 seconds long. How do you give that relevant information, that detailed content, when people are only interested in reading an article for 15 to 20 seconds?
That's a great question. There's also advice to turn off the news right now because it's providing too much pressure on people, too many messages coming at us, right? So great question. So which one of our panelists would like to take a kick at that one? Go ahead, Catherine, you can start.
Yeah, I can take a kick at that. That's one of the most.
I can't hear you 1 second.
Oh, can you hear me now? Hello?
Think on our feet, keep go.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
You got it.
Fixed it.
Yes. Okay, great.
In a high-tech world.
I'm gonna stand beside him so he stops pushing buttons here. So we'll sit over there, Lon. Go ahead, Catherine.
Great, thank you. So concerning this idea of how do we keep people engaged, that kind of goes back to what I was discussing earlier. So of course, having a headline that grabs the attention of people, but that doesn't limit them or discourage them. So it's having that really snappy hook, maybe influencing like a tad bit of some stronger kind of language to kind of get people involved, but having those educational resources and discussing what we can do throughout the article. So having that hope and that optimism laced throughout, rather than having too much kind of heavy information. Of course, you need to deliver that news and to deliver the serious statistics and the consequences of climate change, but delivering it in a way that can connect and engage with the younger generation. And that relates back to word choices and sentence structures and paragraphs. I primarily like to incorporate infographics or images that can really connect with people too. I think it's much easier to read a graphic and to digest that information when we see it visually. And also kind of consuming this information in whatever ways that we can. So when it's an article, it's a bit more difficult because it can be stagnant. But when we're looking at other forms of media, digesting that could be a bit easier. So whether it's on TikTok or social media, maybe combining things together too. So putting TikToks and Reels and different forms of social media into these articles can then inform both older generations and younger generations at the same time. So that was quite a bit of information, but I'm mainly just suggesting to keep adding that sort of hope and positivity throughout the article, while not taking away from the important information that needs to be delivered.
So let me push back. So you want to be positive, but we have a crisis on our hands. Is a positive message even grabbing attention, or do you have to really sort of shock people to pay attention?
Well, I think the positive sort of messaging translates into the solutions. So positive messaging could look more at the educational resources that we can add throughout the article. Of course, we need to emphasize the dire nature of climate change and its progression. But I think by introducing elements of optimism throughout, we're able to kind of motivate people to continue reading and know that they can make a tangible difference themselves, because it can feel very discouraging to just have so much information thrown at you that's negative, that's really strongly worded to a point where you can feel helpless in that moment. So by adding a balance, a little bit of both, there can be some change.
Thank you. So, Ellen, you work with young people. You deal with a short attention span. You get people mobilized. You get people working with you. How do you do that? How do you get them to listen to your message? Because that's what your answer, your question is the youth is sort of tagged with a short attention span and can't sort of, won't look at anything in depth. How do you get people involved with that set of circumstances?
I think that's a great question. So one of the programs that I'm part of through my job as a water wastewater operator is we have a program called One Water Education. And I have the opportunity to visit grade 8 classrooms and teach them all about their local water and wastewater treatment processes, water conservation, how they can make a difference, and hopefully encourage them to, dive into a career in water, is the hope there. So one of the strategies I take when I run this 2-hour workshop in person with these students is I use a variety of media sources, which is kind of what Catherine's been touching on. So you have to know your audience for starters, and you have to know how to communicate with them. So the conversation I'm having with you today about climate change wouldn't be the same conversation I'm having with, say, a grade 8 student. So I think you can get the same messaging across, but you need to structure that message differently depending on your audience. So when I'm in the classroom, we use a variety of hands-on activities. I use some videos. We use different pictures. I use stories that are relatable. Like when I talk about why treating water is important, I tell them what happened in Walkerton. And all of a sudden it connects with them because you're giving them something to compare to and understand. So I think that's kind of the strategy I take with a youth audience to keep their attention, because if you were to just go up and talk at them for 2 hours, they're not listening. Let's be realistic. After about 5-10 minutes, they're tuning out. So when you break it up with videos and hands-on activities and you ask them questions and get them engaged, that keeps their attention really well. So I want to say I super agree with everything Catherine said. You have to know your audience and tailor your communications to that, which is a really big part in communication. So if you're talking about youth and they're not going to read an article for 15 minutes, you need to find a way to communicate on TikTok. You get your message down into 30 seconds or like a video format, because they're going to flip through. You make it catchy, you make it interesting, and I think structuring it around the innovation side. What are we doing to adapt to climate change? There's a lot of great technology out there, a lot of great success stories. Talk about those as, I would say, the primary part of your communication, and to support that, maybe a line or two about why it's important or some stats about what's going on. But I don't think we should focus on, like Catherine said, like the doom and gloom and that overwhelming piece that disengages people and makes them feel helpless.
Thank you. So, Heather, so you mobilize the youth of the college age, and you get people involved in an activist, willingness to stand up, be counted, be heard. How do you get your messaging across to this group?
So pretty much combining what both Catherine and Ellen said. So when we talk about our projects and what we're doing, whether it be to students or in competition, we do it in a very small time frame. So a competition is 5 minutes. How do I tell you about this problem? How do you tell you why it's important? What we did, what we hope to do, all this information to people who are already saturated on a topic. And that comes through combining media, using infographics, using videos, and combining that with stories. So on our team, while we've been working with Daniel Harder, we've been acting stories as a powerful tool to convey information. Because, when you talk to me about rural safeguards for clean drinking water, I don't know what any of that means. But if Ellen comes in and tells me a story from her childhood, I now, understand that importance about it. And everyone has a story. There's always something that you can relate, and talking to people and conversing and using those stories to take all the stats and the metrics and all that doom and gloom and putting it into digestible pieces is extremely beneficial for conveying messages. Even in like an article format, if there's a story and there's a flow and it's easier to follow, and you can connect with it, or you can understand what they're saying through that story, you get a better understanding, and it keeps people's attention. And also they understand what you're saying, which is very important. You can have someone read an entire article, but at the end of the day, if they don't understand what you're trying to convey, you still didn't reach them. So stories are extremely powerful, and if you can put those with images as well and infographics, it's a wonderful package.
Thank you, the three of you. To answer your question, yeah, the power of storytelling. There are thousands of books talks about leadership and storytelling too, and the power of a good story. Right? If you go and listen to a top speaker, somebody's charging a couple $100,000 to speak, they start with the story. Storytelling is a good point. So, Lon, you got some long comments on here. Do you want to address some of them and have questions?
Yes, there are a number of, but I'd like to actually let these comments continue to come in the live chat, because I think that some of the most memorable global classes is when we have this kind of human interaction happening in person here and online. We can see faces too, if possible. So let me just go around in person here for the moment. We are building this great hybrid multimedia classroom for humanity out of Durham College, thanks to the leadership here. So let's engage now with the real people for a moment, and then we can bring it all into the online world. Is there anyone else here that would like to comment at this point? Chris, Kanan, Amni, are you good? Remember, we only have 20 minutes left. I'm looking at the clock, and we need 5 minutes with Madison to do take up and take away. She's been very, very good with her notes. And these are notes that will be the resources for the class. So
let me challenge our
go ahead.
our international students. I mean, one of the real values of having international students on our campus is that people come with a different worldview, different perspective of life, different perspective of issues. Are there any sort of comments from maybe some of these international students around this topic that don't align with what we as Canadians see? I mean, sort of any insights that you want to share, or comments or questions you want? And I'm not putting too much pressure on you, but it truly is one of those values in having a diverse group of people, is that you really get to hear from different perspectives.
Let's see if Kanan, excellent. Kanan from Uganda. I know Kanan well, and he always has a lot of good things to say. In fact, I would like to just tell you one thing that he said that I think was very wise. We have established in the global class that there is significant conflicts that humanity faces. There's conflicts that humanity faces with other humanity, human to human. There's also the conflict that humans face with the environment. His point was, you can't solve the environmental conflicts until you solve the social conflicts, that you can't actually address these. And I thought that was wise. I'm not asking you to talk about that now, Kanan. I just want people to know that from his perspective, coming from Uganda, he said that it's a human problem that we're dealing with first here, which is interesting. Anyways, Kanan, go ahead. Kanan.
Kanan, yes.
Kanan, yes.
Yes, in fact, Lon, that's exactly what I was going to bring up here. Just a question to the panel where
Yeah, hold that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it would just be like talking about whether or not this is more, I want to say, more significant to look at more than looking at social differences that everyone faces.
Yeah.
Right. I just wanted to see what your view is on that.
Problems of, let's say, inequality in the world, poverty, and that we can't solve a big global problem unless we can bring people together. And
so let me rephrase maybe what you're getting to. So we often hear that the developed rich nations of the world are not considering the impact of climate change on less developed countries. And I mean, Africa is one of the ones that gets mentioned all the time, the impact to there. And recently we saw the impact of floods in India and the impact. But is that where you're trying to get? So you've got that imbalance of wealth versus investment in developing countries.
Give him the mic. Okay, I'll make sure he has a mic. Yeah, this is, see, this is good. The students get so into it that they forget the tech. You see, I'd like to believe that. But anyways, live in another reality. Go ahead.
Kind of, but like more in particular that we are, as humans, we're divided in almost every situation we're in, right? So how can we look at climate change when it's really the human division that is more important, right? So that's more of my question.
Do any panelists want to dive into that at all, or have any perspective on that?
Ellen,
She's asking more
go
about the
go in
human
person. Ellen, you want to
condition.
try?
Go ahead, Ellen.
Want to rein that in?
I'm gonna
Go ahead.
Take a
Right?
risk.
Rein it
Take a
in.
risk.
I appreciate you so much.
Rein it in, Ellen. Yeah.
I don't know if it'll fully answer the question or yeah, it's a very complicated question, obviously, but some advice that I just wanted to share that was given to me, because I do agree the human element needs to be fixed. I think that's the biggest factor. And when I was in high school and I was looking at Durham College for programs, I ran the environmental club, but I was also very interested in like humanitarian work and things like that. So I was kind of torn between the two. And I was speaking with, I worked a lot with the custodians at the school through my work with the environmental club. And we were having a conversation one day and I had said, I feel like, they kind of go against each other. Like if I do humanitarian work and I'm helping people who don't have the same, I'm trying to think how to word this.
Approaches or same problems?
Worldview, perspective.
No. I guess I just felt like if I went into humanitarian work, it would directly like negative impact the environmental work because now you have so many more people that have access to all of these technologies and resources that are hurting the environment. So by helping humanity, I felt like, well, aren't we making the impact on the earth worse? Does that kind of make sense? This is my grade 12 trouble between the two. And he had said to me that going into the line of humanitarian work, these people that you're helping, now that they have these opportunities, maybe the people that solve climate change or fix the earth, and they don't have the opportunity to do that right now. And I felt that was really powerful for looking at those two as something together instead of against.
So we're talking
each
about
other.
accessibility,
Yeah.
perhaps. Accessibility to resources, accessibility to education, accessibility to the things that would enable Ugandans to tell us what to do. In other words, solve our problems. If they had the same resources we do, they probably would come up with good or better solutions.
So Catherine has
Something like that, yeah.
Catherine has sort of
Okay.
brought a comment to yours is we can't fix the global problem when we lack global unity. That's essentially what you're saying as well. That's what you're asking. Yeah. Catherine, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I completely agree with Ellen's point and this idea of a lack of accessibility. I think that's one of the most challenging problems at this time, because there's just so much out there now, thanks to technology. There's still so little connection at the same time. And how do we bridge those gaps between different countries and different leaders and different ideas based on difference? So trying to find that unity. And I think just trying to solve these local problems and trying to connect to them, and storytelling, like Heather mentioned, can be great ways to relate and try and tackle small problems that can eventually ripple out and solve larger problems. But then again, we need that kind of unity, at least in different communities, in order to attempt to do that. So that's a very good question.
Anything to add to that, or any additional probing? I know you want to say something here too, so.
It's kind of like a follow-up, like in terms of how we would, because we are divided, right? So how would we get like connected to fight the global problem. Right? Any advice for that? Like how to get global unity?
So you know what, we're doing it today. Education is part of that track. Is that in education, we have a chance to bring the world to a place like Durham College. And we need to build, though, on the different opinions and building that unity. And if we do it with an education, it should transpire eventually into society. Would you agree or disagree?
Definitely.
Hmm.
I agree, yeah.
Yeah.
But and also remember SDG goal number 4, access to, it's not just education, Don, it's high quality education.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's, there's a lot of people online now
Transformative education.
who
Let's go right down to the
provide
mission here.
what they say is education, but is it quality education? I think that's anyways, yeah.
So thank you for your question and your challenge, because it is a challenge. And I challenge all students to have some conversation about that. Yeah. Go ahead, sir.
Ronaldo? Yeah, good.
Well, Lon may know what I might touch on right now, but building on both what Catherine said and what Kanin said for starting with unity is we might need to start with awareness of a problem with that communication. It's hard to understand and relate to someone when you're not aware of their struggles, especially across this wide world. As we mentioned, the floods in India and across the world, we might not be aware of these problems. And that definitely relates back to how do you inform people of these problems? And that may stem from a problem of any individual is I consume the media I want to consume, and that may make me unaware of others' problems. And therefore, I'm not able to unite. I'm not able to communicate effectively regarding those problems. And that way we can't address the problems because I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's called dialogue, and that's why the global classroom is here. Is we try to shape global dialogue and bring in other countries and other young people and other opinions and other worldviews. But you're right, we have to define the problem. So I don't know if Ellen, Catherine, or
We have 10 minutes left. Just
10
keep
minutes
it-
left. Okay, why don't you? Do you have some wrap up you have to do?
Yes, a little bit, but we need.
Well, let's go back to our panel to
Yeah.
see if there are any reflections on the last comment that was made.
Yeah.
Ellen, do you want to start? You look sort of like you had a deep thought in your head there. So
I'm just thinking, like, when we go back to equality and unity, I think a lot of that comes from the work a lot of really great organizations are doing. Like when I think of everything comes back to water for me, I look at the work like Water for People is doing, for example, and you learn about these communities where, women will spend, so many hours a day that they have to travel to collect water to bring back for their family. Like they're not working, they're not going to school. If there's disease in the household, their children aren't going to school. So again, we go back to opportunity. Like these communities don't have an opportunity to be part of the conversation and part of the solution because of the challenges that they're facing. So I think it's so important to also um, focus on work that is bringing about equality and those opportunities to communities that don't have it, because they do need to be part of the conversation. And when we look at what our communities are going to look like with adapting to climate change, I think that to me that means all communities are safe and healthy and prosperous and sustainable, not just Toronto and not Calgary or any city. It's all of our communities need to fit this criteria. So to adapt to climate change, we really need to reimagine and challenge the systems in place and look through like an innovative and creative lens to change these communities to what they should be.
thank you for that. So Heather and Catherine, a quick summary comment on that topic, and I mean quick if you would please. So Heather, you first.
Heather, go ahead.
Yeah, so understanding problems is something that we really strive to do at Enactus. We talk that, climate change can be more than just, what it at face value. It can be social economic problems. It can be lack of available resources. And I think taking the time to truly understand what a problem is and not just the presenting symptoms is key for taking action and resolving those issues. And that comes from researching, having conversations, opening up the communication between people to understand what's really going on. And understanding the problem can be one of the hardest things to do, but only through understanding the problem and understanding the roots and what's really causing these issues is how you make viable solutions, how you can find who can act on them, and start to implement them so they are integrated into our lives in a way that is sustainable and will have that impact you want, and focus on those core issues. And it can be a long process, but it takes a lot of minds, takes a lot of people, takes a lot of stories and resources. So that's why things like DC Talks and getting involved with your local communities and new platforms like Innovate at DC are extremely important to start
Okay,
those
Heather,
conversations.
Heather, I'm going to stop you there. 30 seconds or less. We're going to go to Catherine,
Sorry.
just for somebody. Thank you for that. Some very insightful comments. Catherine, quick comment, please. And then we're going to move on to some just thank yous and that.
Yeah. And take up
Great,
Madison.
thank you. I completely agree with both Heather and Ellen. And I just want to direct the attention to the chat where Danielle had kind of discussed the need to forego comfort in order to be able to kind of understand what others are going through. And I completely agree with this. I think that we have to be open to diverse media that pulls us out of our comfort zone so that we're able to really connect and engage with everything that's presented to us. I think collective reconstruction of how we view climate change is a ways away. But the more discussions that we have like these, the better.
So, Lon, just before I leave my mic, I do want to say thank you to our three panelists for a very intelligent, a very thoughtful, a very very great responses to questions and comments. I just want to say thank you to the three of you. You make us proud as DC alumni, I can tell you that. I also want to say thank you to Sally for providing this opportunity for me to participate. I always enjoy this, especially working with the legendary Lon Appleby here. So, Lon, over to you, buddy. You can press as many buttons as you want now.
Let's just say that to steal a cliche from somewhere, you bloom where you're planted. And, this is a great campus. There's some, leadership from the top, but I also want to just mention a faculty member as well, because these kinds of things don't happen without some really great colleagues that I have. And one of them is Roger Tenkate, who stood in here and taught from here. And he mentioned to me once something very wise that I think really speaks to what Heather was just getting at about problem solving. He said that actually the challenge when people come together is not agreeing on the solution, it's agreeing on the problem. Once you do that, then the solution is much easier. And he even had studied this and done some research on this and could put some data to it. And he said about 70% of the challenge is defining the problem together. 30% is the solution. So you can see how, from his studies and his research, that it really does require us to agree on the problem first, and then the solution. See, sometimes we come at the other way. We talk solutions, but we're not agreeing on the problem. At any rate, Roger, very wise, thank you. And there's some other great faculty members. Danielle is in this class and many others. But finally, I would like to, in these final 3 or 4 minutes, give Madison, another colleague here, a chance to kind of summarize for us. And I'm going to show you just how skillful I am with the camera movement here. Just a second. Here we go, everybody online. Look at this preset. Over to Madison. Madison, you have now the tall task of telling us in a minute or so, what would you say are the 2 or 3 critical takeaway points? You don't need to review. Those notes will be posted for everybody in full. But just what do you think? Go ahead.
Thank you to our wonderful panelists and to everyone that contributed to the conversation today. After going through all of the notes and trying to capture the magic today, I think It was really powerful when we were talking about being mindful and critically thinking about the media that we consume, making sure that we're always asking questions, we're always looking into potential political agendas or where this resource is coming from so that you can make an educated decision about your stance and continue to make positive change. We also talked about the importance of problem solving and engaging in positive conversations, but also difficult conversations, and how sometimes the various perspectives that are brought to the table can lead to really great change. And sometimes that comes in conflict and difficult conversations, like I said, but we'll be able to come up with solutions when we work together. I think those are the two overarching ones that we arrived at today. But again, thank you to everyone for joining us, and I look forward to the next DC Talks.
Can we make sure that we get in the notes what Catherine said, which is collective reconstruction? Oh, you got it already. Yeah. Catherine, I don't know where that came from. That came out of your head. That's all that matters. It's a terrific way to kind of end, I think. And I would like to say that we have a minute left. So I just want to make sure we're on. Sally, is there anything, you put this all together, and is there anything we're missing at this point? No? Okay, great. So let's come back and just then from all of us here in the Global Classroom at Durham College, the Rotary Global Classroom, thank you for this class. And I hope that you will remember that you are watching this all on the class page on the Durham College website for the first time. And the live stream that you are now watching there will be replaced by the recording of the class. That will be cleaned up and put there. And in the resources, if you just scroll down where you will see Sally's great class plan, you will shortly see Madison's notes. And so that page on the Durham College website is there forever. And you can go back there, watch the class again, use those resources, and feel free to email us. If there's anything, email me directly as well. But other than that, I will give the final word to our president, just because none of this would have been built here. And I truly think that we are doing something great to help humanity solve really complex stuff. Thank you, Don.
I have nothing to add.
Okay.
Just thank you to everybody who participated. And again, I really do enjoy these opportunities, Sally. So thank you. And good luck to everybody. We can make a difference if we individually take action and collectively come together to define the problem and then find some solutions. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Okay. Take care, everybody. Brian, yep, we're done. Live stream over. You can turn off the mics.